Hello and welcome, I'm Liam the Music Reviewer. I'm looking like a bit of an English teacher just now, I'm just going to roll with it. And welcome to another review roundup. We're going to be talking about 20 albums today, and the only thing that's really changed is as opposed to doing the categories where I do bad, less bad, okay, I'm just going to be putting a chart up on screen after each album I discuss and put it in order of what's my favourite album I've heard out of the lot we're going to talk about to the least favourite. I just don't want to be going back to number ratings, but I want to try something new, so if you prefer this method, let me know. If not, there's no problem jumping back over. In the description you'll see two links, one to a poll where you can submit albums you want me to talk about. If you already have done that and I don't talk about them in this roundup, I'll get around to them, don't worry. And there'll be another link to a Spotify playlist of all my favourite songs of the year so far that I'm constantly updating, so go give them a go. But until then, I've not even finished the video. Let's start the video. Let's start review roundup. Let's go. Taking my glasses off now, but yes, 100 Gecs, 1000 Gecs. Tree of Clues is an album that I was very excited for. Obviously a very divisive act, very saccharine and over the top to some people, but I think there's enough going for them that elevates them above a novelty act. I had 100 Gecs on my album of the year list, very high up actually, so yeah, to say that I was excited for this remix record would be putting it pretty lightly. And I'm sure you probably are thinking that I like this one just as much, especially considering that the two ringtone remixes are just as good, if not better than the original. And then you consider the other remixes on here like Dorian Electra, Black Dresses, Umru, Hannah Diamond, like so many that are, if not as good, then at least offer like an interesting perspective. But for the most part, the ones I listed there I enjoyed just as much. It's just a bit of a shame that certain remixes don't quite do it for me, specifically the GFOTY Stupid Horse one. I just think it feels more like a cover than a remix to me, which might be me being super pedantic, but yeah, didn't get much out of that. And also some of the kind of the ordering of this album, I just feel that maybe you should only have had like one remix like per track, and if you are going to have multiple ones, then at least space them out a bit better, because you've got like a I Would Never Stop You remix, then 4 minutes later there's another one. It gets a bit deja vu, even if obviously the remixes aren't one-to-one. This is absolutely an album for fans, and I don't mean that as some like easy excuse to defend it. It's just obviously if you're remixing songs that are already pretty kind of to an acquired taste already, yeah, this isn't gonna really convert anyone who already hated the band, but it does feel like a celebration, like a victory lap, seeing as how eventful the past year has been. And I still do like this album. I know I've sounded a little bit negative there, but it's only just because it's a little bit long and some of the remixes aren't all that great. But we did get like the best Fall Out Boy song since they since they came back, so you know, little victories like that. But yeah, I like it. Just I'm a little bit mixed on it. Plenty of remixes on here that I actually do like, so it was well worth my time, and I do think that my hype was mostly met. I've had worse first listens in 2020, but none quite as frustrating as Notes on a Conditional Form. I've never quite loved or even really liked the 1975, but they've always had songs that have done it for me, and even the last album I felt like they got pretty close to achieving a project that I liked as a whole. But with this one, no, they missed the mark big time. For starters, far too long. They could have cut off so many tracks and I would not have missed their presence whatsoever. It's 80 minutes, which I can only really call two songs that I actually like. One being If You're Too Shy, which has that kind of like Genesis Phil Collins cheesiness going for it. I think it suits the band. Eminem Frail State of Mind, which has like a cool bit of like future garage production with some like personal lyrics that are kind of touching. Everything else, what is going on here? The overall concept to talk about like adolescent activism and climate change in like the first two tracks, great, noble enough to like use your big platform for that. But when most of your album has nothing to do with that, and become super self-centered, and you are not writing about it in an interesting way, and you're queer baiting and you're using slurs that you have no right to use, and you just make it all about me, and it's just, I feel like it kind of takes away from the concept. And like I say, there are two moments that I like. One has nothing to do with the lyrics, I just find it to be quite fun. The other one is quite personal, but no, I really just found this to be an absolute drag. I think it's been the one point where I've just kind of reached the end of the teller with Matty Healy, but also in the 1975 as a whole. I've always wanted to be quite optimistic for them, but no, this is easily their weakest release thus far, and if I still did worst albums of the year list, yeah, this would be on that, no problem at all. This was my first time listening to Amnesia Scar, but I was like somewhat aware of their reputation. I was expecting something kind of unsettling and inorganic. The first time I listened to this was like kind of 10, 11 o'clock at night, I think it was. And yeah, for better or worse, like my expectations and hype, I guess you would call it, were met. There are some great moments where the whole deconstructed nature of this album like really does come to fruition. I'm thinking like the title track that sounds like, if you remember those like McDonald's MP3 players, imagine you like put it through a wash and try to play it afterwards. Like it sounds that haunting. For speaking of expectations with this album, when I saw Code Orange on this track list, I was expecting big things, and I'd say they met them. The morphing moods, the somber guitars, and this sampling that I can only kind of describe as being like some sort of like arcade machine noise. Whatever it is, it makes for just this ambiance that puts me in a bit of a terrified state of mind. On my first listen, I did think that this album kind of teetered off after the first three tracks, and while I still think the first three tracks are like the peak of the record, there's still some cool moments like the disintegrating guitars on Trouble or Lolita on Arca. Also Going is this cool little exotic club banger that sounds like it's obviously taking place in a club, but that club is located in one of the 9 circles of hell. So yeah, it is a front-loaded release, but I would definitely recommend this to anyone who's looking for an unsettling, unnerving, unique experience. Continuing on with the theme of deconstructed club music, we've got this new Arca record, which I must admit I was kind of disappointed with at first, because I was going in expecting like an ominous, creepy record akin to our 2017 kind of art popish release, our self-titled effort. But once I kind of put that to the side and took what this was, a kind of more glitchy pop affair, I really did start to warm up to it a whole lot more. The features were one of the first things I was made aware of when it came to Kick a few months back, and obviously Bjork's great, Rosalia's great, Sophie's also quite good. I quite like that collaboration, even if the start of it sounds a little bit goofy. But it was Shy Girl, whose 2018 EP was one of my favourites of that year, with this album focusing on power dynamics and kind of shifting them and trying to find power when the odds are against you. I think having somebody like this whose work is focused on shifting this social situation where these people who have been kind of the victims of it or have kind of faced this pressure are now the sinister figure in a club, like I think that was just a really cool touch, and I was very happy to see her appear on here. While the features are obviously great, that's why I was talking about them, there's so many great moments that come when it's just Arca being allowed to take the spotlight. Her discussions of identity and self-love are very moving, but can also be unsettling, which is obviously the intent with a song like Rikiki, which is trying to put you in the shoes of trans individuals who are kind of just, whether it's physically or over the internet, or I think this is mainly meant to be like when you're in public, but regardless of the context, it's meant to make you feel the fear and dread that is instilled by society. But there's also the opener non-binary, which is a bit more of a hopeful tone, and I do like that kind of variety in terms of the tone. It isn't just one or the other, so I think my original expectations of just having a creepy album actually have a few more layers to it. I think actually ended up working in its favour, especially when you consider just the production, how just great Arca is at what she does. When I'm talking about non-binary there's just this metallic percussion in what can only be described as like the shells of bullets just falling to the floor. It just sounds weirdly mesmerising, and while I think Rip the Slit is probably the weakest moment here, definitely ruins the enjoyment I have a wee bit because of just how repetitive it gets. As a whole, Kick is a great wee record that I can definitely see the importance of, and in terms of just my overall enjoyment, while my initial expectations weren't met in terms of what realm it's existing on, I'm all for it. So yeah, consider me a fan.
Vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
Considering the general mood of the past month or so, where issues that have always been existing and prevalent, sometimes it's just our privilege that gets in the way, it's been really easy to get really angry, and I think if you're not getting angry just now, then you're not paying attention. But I was looking, and I'm sure you watching just now were looking for music that kind of validated that anger you were feeling, or like kind of like would work as a soundtrack for it. And while there are albums that we'll be talking about later on in this video that kind of fit that description, I don't think many have managed to do it quite like Backxwash has done on her new album. This just feels like, to me, like a diary of a lifetime of hurt and pain and just general anger with the world. If that diary also had like bone fragments of like a ram's body on the front cover of it. Despite the fact that this album goes by faster than an episode of Billy and Mandy, the number of topics that Backxwash manages to discuss and in how much detail she manages to do is so impressive. It could easily read off as a checklist, but when it's coming to self-identity, politics, self-love, mental health, it feels so much more like a mind map where everything is interconnected, and I think that's pretty much the overall message. It's just how none of these issues ever exist solely. There's always something interconnecting there. When you've got Ada and Devi of Black Dresses fame on a record, you know that it's going to be abrasive and it's going to be very like in your face, but I was not expecting to have to like kick my feet furiously trying to stay afloat above all of this. Spells is a big one. The chanting on there, which I think is a sample, definitely helps to really capture and cement the intended mood. When you get to the title track as well, which samples Black Sabbath, it feels so unsettling. Even in the quieter moments, like Heaven's Interlude, which is just obviously so lynchy, and especially with the fact that it samples Eraserhead or a song from Eraserhead, I just feel like at no moment did I feel anything remotely close to safe. Usually when it comes to horrorcore rap, it's not all for me, out with maybe the Clipping album from last year, but this Backxwash record is so up my street that I'm going to chat next door to ask this record when the bins are going out. I don't know if that's just a really odd example to bring up, but my point still stands.
What is the reason that you stare?
So you'll have seen this coming from a mile away, considering the fact that 2 of the 5 albums that we've discussed so far have featured Black Dresses on there, and with company like 100 Gecs, yes, you should expect them to sound quite divisive. I think the reputation that Black Dresses have got, I think it'd be right calling them controversial. No one is ever in the middle on them, and I found myself on the more positive end of things. I really struggle to think of an act that's came out in the past 2-3 years that has been as exhilarating as Black Dresses. Thank You last year was a bit of a step down for me from Waste Isolation, but with this new one, Peaceful as Hell, I think is a proper step up. There's really still wanting to use this kind of industrial rock palette, but I think with the variety and tone in terms of what they're discussing, really does help to differentiate a lot of it, where it's not quite as for me, what Thank You was it was just a little bit shallow. I was a bit kind of desensitized to the cacophony of it all. I think their singing has always been a point of contention for a lot of people, but for me, even though it was quite amateurish, that just allows the rawness and the emotion within them to like really just kind of leak out and just give their songs that extra oomph to them. And I think, like I say, the variety in tone in terms of the topics discussed on here, I don't know how to really word it, but when it comes to them talking about self-love, when it comes to them talking about just this pain they're going through, when they're talking about being aware of the damage and the threats that surround you, even if those people include yourself, there's something just super authentic about it that I feel like this kind of style of delivery really lends itself to. Some of the arrangements on here, I kind of wish maybe there was like a few more softer strokes, because I do find myself kind of longing for a bit more diversity in that department, though I totally get why with what they sing about, maybe they don't want to hold back. So that's just maybe just a minor nitpick of mine. Obviously, kind of to address the elephant in the room, black dresses did break up a few months back, which is a great shame, and there's obviously things to be discussed there when it comes to parasocial relationships and how people use certain songs, and maybe they should think about it a bit more, especially with some of the topics that are triggering and are very sensitive, and yeah, should be treated with more respect. I think, putting that to the side just now, I will deeply miss black dresses, but I know that when it comes to Ada and Devi that we're not going to be seeing the last of them, and I wish them all the best with their future endeavours. So I checked this one out after a glowing recommendation from none other than David Rowe. Granted, he did say himself that he wasn't quite expecting, or he wasn't quite sure if other people would like it as much as he did, and unfortunately, yeah, I'm not head over heels for this. For the record, Bootychaaain and Sickboyrari are a couple, and so the kind of what the lyrics usually entail or kind of touch upon, and I guess what the overall appeal of it's meant to be is the chemistry. And personally for me, I don't see enough of that chemistry really coming out and giving this album a sort of push at all. Really, if I was paying attention to anything, it was production, which when you're looking for lo-fi contemporary clouds rap, you could do a lot worse. Even though I wasn't really buying into either's performance on this album, I do think that when it comes to certain songs, their chemistry does really sort of elevate the overall experience. So it's not like I'm solely in on it for the beats. I'm thinking of a song like FU that's got a kind of melancholic beat going on, I think quite hypnotising as well. It's a kind of moment where I think to myself, I wish there was more of this. I would still recommend giving this a go if you're at all sympathetic towards cloud rap, because obviously different strokes for different folks. I will be keeping an eye on this pair if they decide to do a follow-up, because I would like to have some of my gripes addressed, because I could totally see myself being just totally in love with a record like this. If the performances could ever quite reach the highs of the production on here, I would be in for a treat. But as it stands, just a bit on this one. Me excited for a new Carli Jepsen record? I don't know what would have gave you that impression, but yeah, Dedicated Side B, one of the worst kept secrets in music. It was always a case of when rather than if, and we did get this pretty much bang on a year after Dedicated, and right from the get-go, much like Emotion Side B was, you're given no time at all to doubt this release. This Love Isn't Crazy just has the heavy vocalising and dancey production that just, I've got two left feet, but it had me grooving about pretty embarrassingly like somebody's dad. Dedicated Side B isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Let's sort the whole thing out is a moment where it just feels a bit too much for me, and just a little bit, I don't want to say safe, but it just feels a bit too standard for a Carli song for me. Though the album never quite reaches that low ever again. There's so many highs like the fiery Stay Away and the track Solo, which really in a just world would give Carli another chart hit. There's Comeback as well, which I'd like to talk about, featuring Bleachers, which is a much more moodier cut, and it has been on loop a fair bit. The buried vocals on the bridge and the delivery on the third verse as well, it just works so well. I just it's been very much etched into my head like a lot of Carly's music, to be fair. Is it better than Dedicated? I'd have to say no personally, but if this was released as like another album called Obsessed or some synonym of Dedicated, I wouldn't have really like been all that bothered at all. It does stand on its own 2 feet, and for me that was all I would really want from any sort of side B kind of compilation. So yeah, thank you Carly, this is definitely the sort of pick me up that I was in desperate need of just now. So I'm a white man in my 20s, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that I consider myself a Car Seat Headrest fan, one of my favourite acts of the past decade. And when I saw the mixed reception to Making a Door Less Open, I wasn't too surprised, though I will admit that no matter what the fans and critics are saying, how some are saying that it's the worst album they've ever put out and it's a stinker, I want to offer a flip side. And when I say a flip side, like, I don't think this is a good album. It's just one that kind of finds itself like perfectly in the middle of just being an alright record. I think there's quite a few good songs on here that I would definitely kind of come back to if I like separate it from the really low points on here. Like a song like Hostile is just, I think I really kind of find myself coming back to it time and time again because it just sounds like a prime cut from Teens of Denial. It just has that Weezer odor to it, which is very strong, but I very much mean that in a positive way. And then there's Can't Cool Me Down, which, yes, is quite simple, but I can't deny just how effective it is to me, how it just really does, no matter how many bells and whistles it may be lacking, just always manages to make me tap my feet in a very typical timid fashion. But no less, I do find myself very, very warm on that song. Legally, I can't discuss this album without bringing up Hollywood, and yeah, there's not much I can say about it that hasn't been said already. It's a shallow, unexciting, just really bland song, much in the same way that the place it's trying to talk about is. It kind of just comes off to me as like an LCD Sound System parody song, but like Key of Awesome more than Weird Al Yankovic. If I can be petty for a moment, like, no matter how annoying it is as a song in general, well, the fact that you would be so angry towards BoJack Horseman, which talks about Hollywood as well, and you would have a go at that show, but your depiction and your analysis is just way more shallow. I find it a bit funny. Not having a go at you, just find it funny. Don't tell me to fuck off again. I do like some of the experimentation on this record, like Can't Cool Me Down, but you get something like Him, which just feels like a headache to me. I really do get the band want to stand out as being more than just a rock band, and it must feel really annoying to be put in a box like that, but when it lands in such a way where it just feels very lackluster and Detronica, I've really got nothing else to say than I really long for the moments on this record, which out with Can't Cool Me Down do tend to be just still in the same ilk of Teens of Denial, like weightlifters, lifting weights. What's it called again? Weightlifters. Yeah, it's called Weightlifters. Ultimately, it won't come as a shock that another critic doesn't really care all that much for the new Car Seat Headrest album, but I don't think it's all that bad. It's just that maybe the low points are a bit too low. But Everything Now, which I think I've brought this up 2-3 times already in this video, but it's not quite an Everything Now. There's enough good that I can find myself somewhat satisfied with Mad Low, which I'm now calling it that because I can't be bored to say some extra letters out loud. Charli XCX only seems to work in absolutes. You either get 2 mixtapes in the space of a year, or you just go a fair period of time without hearing much from her. So when it turned out that we're going to get a new album in 2020, even though we just had Charli in the latter half of 2019, I wasn't so much surprised by that, rather than the fact that we're getting a new album in the middle of a pandemic. And I wasn't too excited because I didn't really care all that much for Charli, but the lead singles to How I'm Feeling Now left me so satisfied, and even in the context of the record, they somehow work even better. This is easily the best thing that she's put out since Pop 2. Is it as good as Pop 2? time will tell there, but it gets off to an absolute bang with Pink Diamond. It's like bone smashing, brain whirring goodness that, like, if I was like a sleeper agent, this would be the trigger for me. This was what would make me kind of come back into my spy mode. It would be funny if that was actually something that was going on with me, but yeah, definitely not a sleeper agent. The momentum conjured by Charli on this album is just ridiculous. Well, not every song has the same knuckle duster punch as Pink Diamond. I mean, Claws and Forever still just leave me absolutely in awe. It really does get the album started off in a very strong fashion, but the thing is, the record only begins to get either almost as good as this opening run, or to me, even better. There's just some deep cuts on here that just aren't lacking at all. A song that comes to mind is Detonate, with the lead synth line on there, and just the outro just have me close to tears, which I don't really think happens. I don't think Charli's ever managed that for me, but I don't think many songs have managed to do so much with kind of in this sort of similar vein. And then Enemy as well, which just has these like hazy guitars which sound so 80s-ish, kind of like what I could imagine Cocktail Twins working with. There's just, I never found myself getting bored with this album at all. Maybe with Party For You, it's a little bit too simple and lightweight for me, but it was only like a bump on the road while me and Charli are just like cruising down on our ride down the back streets. I'm so happy with how I'm feeling now. Serendipitous is a word that I wanted to use originally for this album, which I don't feel is maybe all that appropriate considering what kind of state of the world it was released during, but in terms of the positivity and joy that I feel while listening to it, that word has connotations with, yeah, it's really great, and I think in terms of just how it encapsulates the lockdown 2020 mood and the fear and anxiety, but also the kind of reflection that it's really made people go through. I mean, yeah, I think even if something better comes out this year, I think Charli XCX has the most important album of the year, which is an achievement. It's no real secret that I'm quite a big fan of The Cure, so much so that when it came to making a video on them, I donned an itchy wig and makeup. So when people were telling me about Choir Boy, a few pals, and they were always bringing up The Cure when trying to big them up to me, I knew I was going to have an act that I liked a fair bit. I was excited to check them out. I wasn't expecting this to be so new wavy. When I think of Cure comparisons, I think more gothy first, and not quite like the new wave sound that they were going with, like with the top. But with each new listen, Gala and Swans is becoming like my go-to summer album. Just the romanticism that it conjures for me, it's just like being in a fast car with the air going through your hair, or like just lying in a garden with the grass between your toes. Is just, yeah, when it comes to the romanticism, it definitely is. That's probably the word that I would use to try and sell it to somebody. The musings from Adam Klopp that these sonic sensations are paired up with, I'm sure that he's probably got a fair few Morrissey comparisons, not for any racist stuff, just because of the similar sort of vocals and those kind of just like pessimistic, hopeless romantic lyrics, which are the good traits that when you're comparing to Morrissey you want to have. Speaking of lyrics, Adam Klopp's lyrics do get to me, but not like in a melancholic fashion. I think just in terms of how they resonate with me and the imagery that is conjured, and the intent is just fantastic to me. A song that comes to mind right away is Toxic-Eye, which already was just infecting me with those ba-da-ba ba-da-ba-ba-bas, but also very, very well done, if I do so say myself. But also just kind of the whole idea of your perspective being so just pessimistic and polluted that you would even think to call it like, oh, having a toxic eye. It's I think the execution was really well done. Sweet Candy as well, and just this story of somebody who just abstains from the great things about life because they want to be safe, or they just don't see the point in it. The imagery and the metaphors used throughout I just find super just interesting and enthralling, so that's definitely a level that I appreciate this album on. But when it comes to the kind of performances and the production, like, it's all very like new wavy, and you might argue that it's very very blatant about its influence, but I don't find it to ever be kind of lacking or like too 2D. I think especially with Sweet Candy, there's some instrumentation that's brought in to almost kind of like tease those pleasantries of life, like the brass and the keys. Like, I just found them to be such cool wee touches. I definitely need to go back to their 2016 album, because I may very well be missing out on a new favourite. But with Gala and Swans, what a lovely wee surprise this has been. It is very inspired, but I don't think that bogs it down at all. It's not a detriment, and it'll easily go down as one of my most listened albums of the year and one of my favourites.
Roblox is my life. I play all day and night.
You know that really patchy sleep you get where you're like 20 minutes from waking up, but you just decide, I'm going to rest my eyes for a little bit, and you just wake up so groggy, the dreams you have are just so disorientating. This Emily Montes album definitely fits that bill, and like, let's just address it. It's poorly mixed. It never sticks with an idea long enough to ever like execute it super well. Lyrically, it is what it is, but it's also made by a 5-year-old. You have to bear that in mind, and I do think some people are going to forget that because they want to have an easy record to dunk on, which come on, we're better than 2016 YouTubers like Leafy and that. Like, I think you need to keep that in mind. And for me, when I keep that in mind, I think it only goes to make this album maybe more charming. Like, it kind of reminds me of how when you're younger, you just have this sense of creativity that hasn't been quite dampened yet, so you'll just feel limitless in what you're able to do. And like I say, well, this is just a very amateurish record. There's just that kind of charm about it that it makes this one that I'm more happy to listen to than that 1975 record that I was talking about earlier. Any album talking about Roblox as well, and it has a very odd Hannah Montana cover, you know what? Go on. Queen of TikTok, queen of music.
Check the footprints in the yard.
I hate how common it is just to compare female singer-songwriters just for the sake of it. Like, if they're a singer-songwriter and they're a woman, then people are happy to compare them, even though most of the time the comparisons just aren't relevant at all. And I bring this up because I'm going to make one of those comparisons that might come off that way. But with Waif, I did find myself enjoying it for a similar reason why I enjoy Mitski's music, and that's for like the sardonic lyrics and the kind of hopeless romanticism, and just the general hopelessness and how it's discussed. But the sound palette on here is far more electropop orientated, so the comparison isn't quite 1-1 there, so I've kind of saved myself the embarrassment. When it comes to those electropop soundscapes, I don't think it's something that the album wants to concern itself too much with, and that's not to say that it's minimal in any way. It's just more that I think it's more of a way for Waif to kind of discuss this whole concept of the caretaker, how damaging it is to constantly want to, if you've got this kind of saviour complex and you're always being the person to like carry the burdens of people you know, and then also on this flip side of like being somebody that's so dependent on other people. It's a bit more of a multifaceted record lyrically, which I found to be pretty interesting. In August is proof that this album isn't incapable of being great in both departments. This tale of a withering romance being matched up by this drum machine that just sounds more faint and faint. It resembles more of a heartbeat than anything. Sadly, I don't feel like the album kind of wins me over all the way when it comes to its arrangements. Siren is a song that comes to mind when I'm talking about this specific complaint, because I like it for the most part, but when it gets to the end and the climax of the track and the change that accompanies it, don't know, just kind of feels quite underwhelming to me. And I guess maybe for some people that kind of anticlimax would work for them, but for me it left me with a sense of longing, which, come to think of it, maybe that's meant to be the point, but I didn't find it satisfying to listen to. Spanning over just over half an hour, I think Waif manages to capture a portrait of these different personas in quite a cool way, even if in some areas and at some points during this album I'm left wanting a little bit more, but would still recommend it if you're looking for a singer-songwriter album that maybe has passed you by. Jeff Rosenstock just doesn't miss. I've never felt disappointed or let down by a record of his, so when it was announced that we were getting a new album this year out of the blue, excited isn't doing justice to how I was feeling. I jumped in right away when it was dropped out of nowhere, and it was just like Christmas Day, so it was, albeit a bit more sweaty, but I've had more time to think about it now after that initial excitement, and personally I don't like it as much as I did first time around. I actually like it a whole lot more. Jeff's flair for angsty social commentary isn't one of his most subtle traits, but I do think that's what makes people, especially those who don't really care for pop punk music, I think that's what makes them gravitate towards him. Post in 2018 was his most like blatant political album, and No Dream is a very political album as well, but I feel like what makes it so much more substantial is its concept and its aims are a bit more clear cut, and so I think that means that when it comes to the execution on No Dream, it just does a lot for me. The overall concept of this album, to me anyway, seems to be about how people go for this haze, this dreamlike state where they can kind of ignore what's going on. You could call it white privilege, or you could call it any number of things, but the simple answer that Jeff gives is that you need to be aware, you need to be fighting, you can't live in this blissful ignorance, because if you need to be aware and you need to be doing something, and again I think this was like a really welcome listen to me, because it always just gets me into this fiery state. The instrumentation is just like pure pop punk. Sometimes it's more kind of in the 90s realm of those like great Dookie days, and then other times it's just what we've come to expect. Not to say that it's predictable, but just when it comes to the excitement that Jeff can instill in his music, it's here in abundance. Somebody could write this off as being quite shallow, but I think equating shallow and blunt is just, I think you're doing yourself a great disservice, and I think you're doing songs on here a great disservice, because some of this is Jeff's best material. A song like Fame, where he kind of just says how it's kind of worthless to be a celebrity nowadays, especially when most of the time what you stand for kind of actively goes against wanting to create a better world, and the calls for burning shit down feel very timely, very timely, and get such a great reaction out of me. But my favourite song on here, and a new runner for my favourite Jeff song in general, is The Beauty of Breathing. The first verse the first verse and the second verse paired together, when it comes to just when you're so frustrated, the imagery that can be conjured in your head, how overwhelming it can be, and then the second verse when somebody tries to be like, oh, just breathe, just like, oh, take some deep breaths, and how futile and how even more frustrating that can be. I've never heard somebody word it like this, or even touch on the topic of that, which I just found to be very validating indeed. Old Crap feels like part 2 of this relief exercise for Jeff, and the imagery of self-destruction on here just feels genius at points, and the buried brass as well is a cool wee instrumental inflection as well. Fantastic album here, one that you shouldn't be surprised to see very high up on a certain list come the end of the year. So Owen is a solo project of Mike Kinsella of American football fame. He's 2 decades deep into this project to this point, and this is his 10th record underneath that name, and I would say it's pretty easy to call this his most vulnerable and transparent record to date. If you're looking for a reference point, if you're not familiar with Mike Kinsella's solo work under the Owen name, think Mark Kozlek, more Benji than his more rantier stuff in the later Sun Kill Moon days. It's something you'll kind of feel the vibe from when it comes to something like Dead for Days, where Mike's talking about his marriage breaking down and the death of his dad. Is all very heavy, and the production side of things with the Cajun drums and the percussion sprinkled in, it feels like the kind of musical metaphor for this kind of release and just the sheer emotional intensity that Mike is going through. When paired with Mum and Dead and the added synthesizer there, the allure of the catharsis and the pain of Avalanche becomes just weirdly alluring. It's clear to see that working with producer and Bon Iver drummer Sean Carey is doing wonders for Owen. I think when it comes to some of the more, I don't want to say beefier, but when it comes to the more fleshed out tracks like On With The Show, it feels like the most American football-esque moments on here, though definitely more LP free than either of the House albums. If I was to give any nitpicks when it comes to this album, I feel like the comedy and more so kind of the comedic couplets and lines, I just they kind of take me at the moment a little bit. That is obviously just a small thing, but it's something anyway that I would have changed, but I don't want to police Mike's tone when it comes to dealing with these kind of like obviously very traumatic moments. Just a wee small thing like that, because nothing really else bothers me about this album. It feels really weird to be listening to it during the summer when obviously autumn and winter seem like the more apt times, like the number of times I've walked about during winter with all the snow or the ice listening to American football, countless at this point. But I think the production is no less stunning, the lyrics are no less impactful, and the tears going down my face are no less wet.
Day off in Kyoto, aboard at the temple.
So this was easily one of my most anticipated records of the year, and I think that simply came down to the fact that not only was her first solo album, Stranger in the Alps, so great, but the collaborations Phoebe had been doing with the Better Oblivion Community Centre and Boy Genius just had me so excited to see like what tricks she had picked up along the way, and what experience, what new stories she had to tell. And while this is definitely a case of, oh, it's your sophomore album, just do what you did before but bigger and better, I don't think it detracted from my enjoyment, which is a bit of a weird word to use when talking about such a sad album, but you get the point. I definitely feel myself being more fulfilled and satisfied when it comes to the more substantial moments, the beefier cuts like Kyoto, which just I think goes to show the people that try and say that Phoebe Bridgers and her ilk all sound the same and they don't vary up enough. Like, you listen to a song like this, you know that they're just talking shit. And another song that kind of fills or like it's got a similar kind of beefiness to it, and it's a lot more reverb heavy as well, is Chinese Satellite, one of the best songs Phoebe has ever put out, just talking about this sort of like hope, this hopeless hope, just this way that you kind of like lie to yourself and you wish on just these symbols of hope, even when you don't believe it a single bit, even though you still want to put all this energy into it. It's such a specific frame of mind that I just think the way that she puts it is a lot better than the way that I am trying to describe it to you. Speaking of lyrics, that's definitely the plane that I enjoy this album the most on. The title track is another good example where Phoebe is reflecting on parasocial relationships and how sometimes she herself has been the punisher, where you just kind of just step the line of kind of being a fan. It's been just a layer where I just love unknotting it with each new listen of it. But the production and the performances are pretty great throughout. The closing track especially feels like a retort to the whole straw man of this being another melancholic, acoustic, sad affair. It's still melancholic and sad, but it's so much more varied than that. To just call it just more of the same, it would just be a total lie. I can't say I'm head over heels for Punisher when it comes to Moonsong and Saviour Complex. I just don't feel myself being totally captivated by them yet, but I mean, give this album some time, I may be talking completely different come the end of the year. But I love this album just now, and I can't wait to be walking around during autumn time with the leaves falling about the place and just the whole kind of, you know, all the moods that feel just a more match to that time of the year. I think Punisher is going to be a great album to listen to during that time.
E-Cad, you heard of these lads, it's the myth, how we made a grip, never rode dick. Truly the Cadillac, I had to contract L's on a quick. Dick 'em up, slick, talking no trick.
So, in my predicting 2020 music video, I said that we would be getting this album like around about Coachella time, which obviously didn't happen, but a lot of things that I didn't predict in that video happened that had an effect on that. and we still got the album, so technically I'm still right. I'm just going to say that just now. But yeah, I was so excited for RTJ 4. RTJ 2 is one of my favourite hip hop albums and albums ever, really. And 1 and 3 are still great within their own right, so I think a lot of people, including myself, are thinking, how on earth is 4? How on earth are Mike and Elle going to be able to meet our expectations? And just pretty much from the get-go with Yankee and the Brave, just any worries or doubts that I had were just completely wiped away. It's just so self-assured and overflowing with attitude. It's what I imagine the Beastie Boys would be hitting it with if they were still around nowadays. Unfortunately, Ooh La La follows this up, and it kind of gets the start and run off to a bit of a weak start. I just find the chorus just so phoned in, as well as the beat. It really does take away from any of the aggression and the how they, even if Mike and Elle are intending to intimidate you, just I don't think it kind of gets across with how just muddled it all is. But thankfully the album never really hits that low again, and if anything, this album repeatedly reminds me why I cared about Run the Jewels so much in the first place. There's so many moments like this on this album that I'd be here all day, but the run of Holy Calamafuck, Goonies vs E.T. and Walking in the Snow, just one of the strongest runs off an album this year, easily. I love like the Prodigy kind of like breakbeat stylings on Goonies vs E.T. And Walking the Snow, just that verse from Killer Mike is just, and Elle, to be fair, like I think Elle and Killer Mike are on equal levels on this album like they usually are, but Mike has like the standout verse when it comes to this song. While I would say this is our weakest project to date, I think that simply just comes down to the fact that they've set such a high bar for themselves. Ooh La La is an easy skip, and the album does have a clear peak, but I still think for the most part this is just a reminder for me why I love the duo so much, and yeah, I still think it's a pretty strong record, so yeah, yet to see them miss. I was a really big fan of Soccer Mummy's 2018 album Clean. I had next to no expectations of it, and while it's quite topically shallow, it always seems to just address itself or concern itself with romance. I just found it to be an album where every song just had a really memorable moment with its production that just, yeah, made it one that I loved coming back to time and time again. And when it came to the opener of Colour Theory, an album that I took far too long to get around to considering how much I liked her last album, it seemed to kind of buck the trend where it's kind of concerning itself more with mental health and depression and kind of dealing with these inner thoughts, and I think from the get-go it kind of tells you what it's trying to do, and I do find myself with certain songs on here where the imagery that's used I find to be super effective, even if sometimes it can be a bit lacking. Circle the Drain has the good instance of that imagery where it's talking about like feeling like you've got this mould from your brain that spreads around your body, just showing how interconnected depression is. Like, it's not just something that makes you feel sad, it can be something that just leaves you physically incapable of wanting to do anything. But when it comes to Night Swimming, I just feel like the whole the ending bit where she's going about like sinking like a stone, I just think to be again, not to tone police, I think that's something that's easy to do when you're not the one putting out your feelings there, but I just I feel like there could have been a way of talking about this a bit better. But there is good moments of imagery used throughout. There's even like a quasi Mitski moment later on in the album. While it's not as good as Clean when it comes to the cool production moments, I still think you get some like quite cool points that I find to be quite memorable, like the hazy, playful 90s guitars on Crawling My Skin. You get some good moments of drones as well. Yellow is the colour of our eyes as well. It was just one that just sprawls so much. It's the lengthiest cut on here, and I think it's probably one of, if not the strongest track on this record. So Colour Theory was an interesting follow-up. I don't find myself liking it as much as Clean, but in terms of the concept of it, what Sophie managed to get out there and how she managed to word herself, I was finding myself enjoying it a fair bit, even though I've got my gripes with some of the imagery, and I wish that when it came to the overall performances that, I don't know, I wish I found myself liking it a lot more. The penultimate album we're going to talk about today comes from Vale-Smith, who, if you've watched this channel for any period of time, you've probably heard brought up at some point, full disclosure. I know the guy personally is a friend of mine, but an honest boy, and my history of his work has been Origami and the EP preceding it, where great stuff. 10-Year-Old Garden I found to be, even though I thought the palette needed a bit more of a shaking up for me personally coming off the back of Origami, I still found it to be something that I enjoyed my time with. While my initial listen to this left me feeling a little bit let down, this kind of record just reminded me why being bribed is so important. I mean, giving an album a second listen is so important, because the detail orientated approach this time around with this record makes it feel more subtly distinct to what Vale-Smith has done before. The song that comes to mind for me is Advancement, which just makes me feel like I'm trapped inside a mainframe. Like, I don't know, it kind of reminds me kind of like Blank Banshee a wee bit. You've got Coratune as well, which has this like crunchiness near the end. It feels like an ASMR recording, like a field recording that is. And then you've got Mosquitoes, which has this like MIDI chirping, like it's like a PS1 N64 game, and that is the sound that you'd get near the start of it, when you're collecting like coins or whatever. It's also got this jaunty wee closer as well, which is lovely. Just so many wee nuances on nearly every track, which makes it like such a delight to come back to time and time again, when you come out of it with like 5 new favourite little details. I can't bring up this album without mentioning Yusuke's Witness. Just one of my, I think it might be my favourite closer of the year, at least one of them anyway. While Origami was all about adrenaline and just having this constant momentum behind it, it's clear to see that Vale-Smith is kind of shifting a wee bit into taking his time and focusing on each little detail, and I think it's definitely working for him, and I'm interested to see what this approach can result in for the next EP or next album. But yeah, this was a pleasant album. Benefits greatly from just this whole new attentive craftsmanship. And last but by no means least, we have Young Lean with the album Starz. Just his whole nebulous kind of flavour of rap has just had such an unreal impact on music in general, along with rappers like Little Ugly Mane as well. But Young Lean could have easily put out 20 other like Unknown A, Unknown B, Unknown C records and done totally fine, didn't have to evolve at all, but I do really admire him more for his later efforts where he was really trying to push himself out of his comfort zone, while having to like battle some like really tough struggles as well. Essentially what Young Lean does in this album is take the best elements of what he's done already and just put them onto the one record, and it all just seems to like click together so well. Like it was just meant to be. Warlord was an album that came out in 2015. Was it 2015 or 2016? I can't quite remember just now. I'll correct myself. But anyway, it was such more of an experimental, harsh palette of sound, and I think he kind of uses that quite a fair bit in an effective manner when it comes to the song My Agenda, which to me has like the paranoia and just fear-inducedness that comes with like waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning just after you've had a nightmare. And you've got the singing that he was trying to do more of with the album Stranger, and I know some people don't really care for it, but the whole lackadaisical approach to it I find charming. There's a beauty behind it, and when it comes to a song like Dance in the Dark, it just works super well for me. That song in particular really like appealed to the peep stan in me. All of this culminates in an album that showcases Lean at his best. Moments like the title track I don't think would have worked. There would have been like mere blips when it came to any of his earlier stuff, but on here there's just a sense of earnestness that works just so well for him and really does match the dreaminess of the arrangement that backs him up. Old Habits Die Hard and songs like Hellraiser do sound like they took a page or two from like the Sad Boys mid-2010s handbook, but for me, like maybe that would be like the weakest moment where he starts to kind of go back to what he's been doing before, but I still enjoy them. Like I can't really have to go at the album for that. And there's some more kind of assertive bangers like Pikachu and Ice Heart, which I think are quite welcome. They only add to the variety on this album, which I feel there's a lot of. I know there'll be people that listen to this and they just don't see or hear what I hear from it, but for me this is the best album I think he's ever put out. There's just so many just wee layers to it that as someone that's always appreciated his work, I definitely see and appreciate what he's doing on here. So yeah, for me, the best Young Lean project ever really put out, which again says a lot considering how much I listened to Unknown Death 2002. But anyway, that's the end of this review roundup. I have no idea how long it's lasted or how long I've blabbered on. Load of technical issues throughout, but no, I've enjoyed doing this. If you've enjoyed it, then please leave a like. If you want to look at the playlist on Spotify, my favourite song of the year so far, you can go follow that in the description, along with the poll where you can just submit albums that you feel like I should give a go or are worth me spending my time talking about. I've started doing Twitch as well, by the way. I do that every Sunday at 8 PM. Right now I'm doing the Crash Bandicoot trilogy. It's been a lot of fun, so join me over there. And if you want to, I'll bring up my Patreon. Again, it'll be down in the description. £1 a month, early access to my videos. You may be doing that just now with this one. But yeah, thank you as always for watching, and as always, stay safe, stay hydrated,